On today's show, was the Mavs collapse against the Suns signs of bigger issues that need to be addressed? Is it time to move on from Jason Kidd? And why have the Mavs been so bad lately? We'll talk about that and more on today's Locked On Mavs.
I'm Luka Doncic, and this is Locked On Mavericks podcast.
Mavericks, NBA champions. Bang! Bang! It's good, and the Mavericks have won the game.
If you don't believe, you shouldn't be here.
Loyalty never fades away.
And welcome. You are locked on to the Dallas Mavericks. My name is Nick Angstadt, media member and NBA channel manager of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for being part of the show, making Locked On Mavs your first listen today, especially after a loss like that. Man, real one right there. But the best way you can help us grow the show is to listen every day, leave a 5-star review, like the video, and comment anything below. Let us know in the comment section, is it time for the Mavs to move on from Jason Kidd, or what other move should be made? Give me the alternative if you don't think so. Joining me, as always, now on a Thursday, Friday, whenever you're listening to this, from Valley Sports Southwest, what you got for me, Dana Larson?
I'll be here any day that you need me. And you still sound a little sad today, Nick, I have to say. I was hoping maybe after the 24-hour-ish cooling period, maybe you would wake up, everybody would feel a little bit better, blood pressure back to normal. No, not yet.
Instead, I woke up with a head cold. It's like my brain is getting squeezed right in the middle. It's like my brain is a lemon. I'm just getting juiced right now. That's what it feels
miserable. I'm so sorry, but we will try to lift you up and other sad Mavs fans today.
We're gonna talk through it. We'll talk through it. We'll have the hard
That's right.
conversations, right? This is like something in the family happens, like someone says something that they're not supposed to somebody else. You're like, all right, let's sit down at the table. It's all out in the open, and we'll talk about it. We'll talk about Jason Kidd. Is it time to move on? Would that be a big mistake if the Mavs did that? We'll talk through that. The Mavs, since November 14th, are 16-18. Let's talk about it. Let's go through the reasons why what things are solvable in that situation and all that. But I want to start here, Dana. The Mavs lose to the Suns, and it just felt like the worst loss ever, even though on paper, it wouldn't have been like the worst one. Kyrie was out. They had the healthy Suns team. Suns have been playing really well. You'd normally look at a game like that and go, man, schedule loss / injury loss / Suns got hot, whatever you want to call it. But the way that it happened and the way that it broke down so clearly seemed like it was signs of bigger issues. What did you take from that 44, basically 44-point collapse right in the middle of that game?
Okay, so let's lay down on the couch and begin the therapy session here together, okay?
Should I actually lay down?
There you go. Yes, so much buildup for this game, obviously, and a high-profile week at home, right? And it starts with Boston in a measuring stick game. And then Phoenix, okay, fine. They don't get the win against Boston, but now you're back in the Western Conference against a rival and a game that really, really matters. And, you could secure the season series right here and, make a big statement and, their hot streak. So I think there was so much buildup with the potential for this game. And there is all of this narrative about these two teams being these rivals, which it feels like. I don't know if the players actually truly believe any of that, but boy, they play into it.
They play like they do.
They play like they do.
There was a moment in the game where Dante Exum and Bradley Beal were like going at each other after a whistle. There was a free throw being taken, and like Bradley Beal was upset that Dante Exum was like stepping over the 3-point line or something, and he kept pointing at him, and they kept going back. And I was like, these guys have been on this team for like 20 minutes, and they are already getting into. They're already getting into it.
It's like you walk in, you get your locker with your new team, and you're told, and now you hate the Phoenix Suns, or now you hate the Dallas Mavericks. Everything irritated everybody in that game. And that was fun for fans, and it brought the entertainment level up even more. But it did not play in the favor of the Mavericks, who obviously were unable to keep their cool and their composure. And I think that was the biggest issue that comes out of that game, is seeing now, and as Jason Kidd said, it's a trend, unfortunately. They saw it in the Boston game, and then even talked about it. That's the thing. It's like a parent that's like, we talked about this already. You're supposed to be working on this and aware of this,
We
right?
talked about this.
And 2 days later, you do the exact same thing. So did you not hear anything I said, right? So I think there was just all of this building up and then boiling over the top. And, you've got Luka Doncic, your absolute leader, who's setting the tone for everything. And I think that he mentally and physically probably pretty spent at this point. He's been playing with a lot of bumps and bruises and banged up, and he's being asked to do a ton. And he is an elite talent who can carry a team. But you could sense that he's not right physically. He's being picked on defensively. The Mavericks not really able to find ways to help him with that. And it felt like it did just reach a boiling point. And I think, what was the wording Jason Kidd used too about it, that sometimes you short circuit. That really hit home to me afterwards. He said, sometimes you just short circuit, and they lost focus. Everybody did. And I think that's the biggest thing to come out of this game is you've got to absorb body blows and come back swinging. Times are tough in the NBA, hard games, tough opponents. You're going to miss shots. Other teams' players are going to get hot, right? So it's this team has got to find a way to be able to deal with those things.
And something I wish I said after the game last night, when I was on it slightly, is that from the jump, from the first quarter, from the very beginning of this game, every single play mattered. So it felt like a playoff atmosphere in there. Now, probably like a first round playoff game, but it felt like it, where everything mattered. Everything was so big. The crowd was so into it. Like every bad call, there was people all over around me in the section I was sitting in, standing up after every call. And that usually people yell from a seated position. I'm here to hang out and chill and watch this game. But if you're really into it, you stand up every single time, right? Like every play that happens, every call that's wrong that you think. And these players that have been playing are young. The team has gotten young almost overnight, it seems like. Luka, 24, Grant Williams, 25, sometimes acts like he's 35, sometimes acts like he's 15. Depends on the day. You've got, Josh Green, Jaden Hardy, Derek Lively, all playing in this game. Exum is just coming back into the NBA. He's not the youngest, but still. Derek Jones Jr.'s minimum contract working his way, hopefully into a bigger deal. And Kyrie didn't play. So you all of a sudden have this young rotation in this game that was in this huge moment. Not a lot of playoff experience with some of these younger guys too. Luka and Grant Williams obviously do, but not a lot of the rest of the guys. And so for it to break open the way that it did, it kind of makes sense that it was just so fast and so efficient how far it broke down, because this team has done that anyway. But the fact that it was so bad and so embarrassing and so relatable to other losses, made sense to me. It just was disappointing to see it happen so badly the way that it did.
Agree. And to see, like you always say, finish halves strong, right? Finish the first half strong. And they let Phoenix go on like a 15-2 run, 15-3, I can't remember. And it was down to a 1-point halftime lead. And you just thought, all right, that's fine. Just don't let your foot off the gas. And that's when, Luka's walking off and he's getting a tech on the way out, and they come back out and could not stop Devin Booker, and they could not make a shot. It was just it was a recipe for, a disaster, unfortunately. And that's why they've got to find, moments from these kind of losses and collapses that you can use the next time, because they just have to learn from these things, and they have to find a way to grow from them.
They do. They've got to take that next step. And to me, it's for them to win a playoff series now. I'm kind of thinking that they have to grow from this season. I think this is sort of a quote unquote gap year where I don't expect them to win the title, but I expect them to take a step forward, definitely a step forward from last year, but take a step forward. And if they're going to win a first round series, these types of games are things they have to learn from, because it can't just be, it's kind of what they did 2 years ago, where they win a playoff game big and then they lose the next game bad. And then they went the blowout. That Sun series was all basically blowouts 2 years ago anyway. But coming up, let's talk about if this is all signs of bigger things. Why are the Mavericks 16-18 since November 14th? We'll talk about all that and more with Dana coming up. Today's episode brought to you by eBay Motors. eBay Motors has teamed up with the GOAT, Josh Lloyd from Locked On Fantasy Basketball to bring you some of the best fantasy picks each week. Go check out some of his players that are available in the eBay's Guaranteed Fit Fantasy Picks of the Week. He's got a couple there for you. And one that I'm interested in is somebody that the Mavericks were going to draft at one point in time, Marvin Bagley III. Josh says with Daniel Gafford in the concussion protocol, Bagley has a shot at nice minutes on a new team for the short term. So if you're thinking about Marvin Bagley, that's something that maybe you could look into with him on the Wizards. So check out him for your fantasy team. He's going to bring you some of those stats that you may need. And just like a fantasy player, daily fantasy player, league long, like season long fantasy player needs to be a perfect fit, eBay Motors has the perfect fit for your car. 122 million parts. That's so many different parts. So you know that they've got exactly what you need. eBay Motors has it with their eBay Guaranteed Fit. It's guaranteed to fit your ride the first time, every time. I hate that. I hate when you order a windshield wiper or something, it doesn't fit your car, and then you've got to send it back, and you got to do all that kind of stuff. Don't worry about that with eBay Motors. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply.
Uh-oh, guess what day it is? Guess what day it is, huh? Anybody?
If you are listening on a Friday, it is a game day.
That's true. Okay.
Thanks, everyone, for hanging out with us on Locked On Mavs, being part of the show, part of the Raccoon Squad, listening every day. Appreciate each and every one of you, especially on a day like this where it just feels... I got a text on the subtext line this morning. Nick, I'm giving up on the Mavericks for a while. It's affecting my mental health. It's affecting me personally. I'm getting short with people. I get that, but we're here to try and talk you through it. Let's work through it as a family, basically, and work through. Do you think that a collapse like last night, do you think that that's something they need to work through this season, or it's something that they can take through the rest of the season, try and work on, and then mature in the offseason? Because we did see Luka and this team, mature in the offseason, but is that too late for them to work on this kind of issue?
I just think this is something that is not hard to work on. So to me, I really feel like it's you focus on it. It's talked about. You can be uber competitive. You can be super passionate. You can be all of those things, but you also can be really focused. Those are not things that are disparate, right? Those can, and that is what makes people great at what they do, if you can combine those things. So to me, I don't think it's like, oh, you got to be 28 to be mature and have composure. No, I mean, I think these are things that really, if you want to, you can fix it. I don't think it's that hard.
Where do you think that comes from? Does it come from coach? We'll talk about Jason Kidd a little bit, but does it come from the top down there? Does it come from your leaders on the floor? It feels like everybody last night in the presser was asking okay, where does this come from? It's obviously a problem, but where does it get addressed?
Yes, I'm sure it's your whole support staff, right? And that is coaching, and that is probably your family. That is all of the people that are around you, that are watching you, right?
We don't blame the families of the players enough.
And I'm not putting blame on them. I'm just saying you are certainly there, to those people that you look to,
right?
Whether it's your parents or your loved ones, your spouse, whatever that you come home to. I think honestly, all of those people can help. It's your support staff around you, and to me, maybe the coaching, and I don't know how much you want to get into that right now. But, and for somebody like, these superstar players, it has to be someone you have the utmost respect for, to really listen to, because when you're as good as you are, as good as these elite superstars are, it's probably hard to want to take in what just anybody is telling you need to do, because you've just been better than everybody else most of your life, but I think Luka has extremely high goals for his career. And I think it doesn't take very much to see that if you want to be an MVP and win a championship, this is something that has to become part of how you lead a team. And it's not just Luka, certainly, but I mean, to me, I think it's pretty obvious. I think it's one of those things that he understands. there you look at the greats, the all-time greats, they had to work through some of this stuff too, but ultimately you have to understand it is part of it.
We might as well get into the kid stuff now because we're into it now. Mavs fans think that it is Jason Kidd, that he's the one from the top down, and I think a lot of it stems from, and I'm sorry, Dana, I'm probably responsible for some of this because of the quotes and the things that we've talked about and how
I'm not playing. I'm watching, just like you guys.
This from last year, you've got
You gotta ask them. I'm just a coach.
Like things like that, like those types of quotes that we hear from Jason Kidd. I think the pressers and the visible part of Jason Kidd is only about 10-15% of what you actually see of what a coach does. And so it's hard to see those things and to see him see things like that, see him maybe not take responsibility publicly to the media, whether that matters or not, and get frustrated that, man, why doesn't he hold them accountable? Why doesn't he scream in a ref's face and like get emotional and show some emotion behind it and try and take this team where they need to be? Would moving on from Jason Kidd mid-season, do you think that would be a mistake at this point?
Oh, yes, it would be a complete mistake because for one, there's been enough chaos this season already, just in terms of all of the injuries they've had to deal with. You've got to at some point try to lock in with your group, hope you get healthy, and try to figure out what that actually looks like. I don't know. I don't think that. And I don't even think he's been here long enough to do that yet. Plus, he is the one who has commands that kind of respect from Kyrie Irving and from Luka Doncic. And you have to have relationships. You have to be able to have those relationships. Now, to me, you are asking Jason Kidd to try to be someone he simply is not. I know that there's the frustrations behind the coy answers in press conferences, and it feels like we want to hear more from him in those situations. And we certainly don't know what at all is being said behind closed doors with him and his players. Jason Kidd has never been somebody who's a yeller. He has not as a player, not as a coach. It is not who he is. And it is not probably what coaches with this generation really can be either. You don't see that many coaches that are out there screaming and yelling, and the way he worked referees as a player was not by yelling at them. In fact, you would wish that Luka would probably learn to do it the way he did it, which was much more casually, much more out of public vision, because that's what you look like you're standing up the refs, right? And you're making a public show of it. And that's never going to get you what you want. So to me, there are things that Jason Kidd brings to the table. And a lot of that has to do with his direct relationships with those two stars. And you need to be able to give that a little more time. And I'm sorry that you're not getting and you're probably a kind of passionate person, right? I'm the same way. I can speak to that. I have a husband who's a lot like Jason Kidd, and it's infuriating, right? To those of us who are very, kind of animated or whatever, and you see, how could somebody just be standing there so calmly? It makes you crazy. But you cannot make them be anything other than they are, right?
It's kind of wild to me that we come to this decision. I'm saying like Mavs fans, people that love the Mavs, where you say, man, this team, they have such wild emotional swings, and they're so high and so low, and they lose their composure. And then you have a coach who stays so even keeled the whole time. And then you look at the coach and go, oh, why isn't that coach getting someone? And I'm responsible for doing that too. I wish I have a question written down. Why doesn't he raise his voice ever? It bothers me. I want Jana's opinion on this. But
now you actually, you would probably prefer that Luka was more like Jason Kidd on the court.
Can they switch places? Can we have our players be docile and our coach be like animated and all that? But kid's demeanor, the team could learn from it. And yeah, it is just weird that is an opposite. And like, I think that stems from, there's just a problem. It's hard to kind of pinpoint exactly what it is. And so you're just like, well, I just wish the thing that is the thing right now, the demeanor of the team and the demeanor of the coach, I wish it was the opposite, because then it would be better, right? Like I wish it was it's always, I wish everything could change and then everything would be better, right? And it's not always the case.
That's not always the case. And you have to remember, I mean, this is a 3-game losing streak. The Mavs have not lost more than 3 all year. They're the Phoenix Suns, who look like unbeatable right now, lost 9 of 12. They lost 9 of 12 not long ago. And I'm sure all of the, Locked On Suns shows were as frustrated as how, you and I might sound today. So you just have to really be careful not to overreact sometime. At the point of the year that we're at, everybody dying to get to the All-Star break. There's still a lot of basketball to be played.
A lot of basketball to be played. Coming up, let's talk about the basketball they have played. Why are they 16-18 since November 14th? Let's get into that. Talk about some of the issues. What's solvable? What can we fix? We'll talk about that coming up. Today's episode is brought to you by Grammarly. Grammarly, I've got it on my browser right now, and I use it every single day to try and make sure that I spell things correctly and that I'm using the correct grammar and all of that. Check out Grammarly. You can download it. You can download the desktop app that helps if you're in college or in school, where you take, an entire paper, you upload it into Grammarly, you just copy and paste it, and it'll walk you through every single thing in your paper that needs to be worked on. It's something that I used in college all the time, and it's something that I use every day when I type and write, and I make way more typos on my phone than I do on my desktop because I have the Grammarly extension there. For over 10 years, Grammarly has been powered by AI technology you can trust to help you across all platforms where you write the most. And now Grammarly helps you do even more. With one click, you can easily brainstorm, rewrite, and reply with suggestions based on your context and goals. You can improve productivity for you and your teams that you work with. Start being more productive at work. Go to Grammarly.com/podcast. That's Grammarly, GRAMMARLY.com/podcast to download for free today. Grammarly.com/podcast, so they know that Locked On Mavs sent you. Grammarly.com/podcast.
I don't always tell you guys the truth.
It's my favorite drop still. The most honest he's ever been. Most honest any coach has ever been, ever. All right, Dana. The Mavs are 16-18 since November 14th. They had an 8-2 start to the season. We were feeling really good. We're like, all right, everything's pointing high. Derek Lively's great. Luka and Kyrie together. 16-18 since then. They are the only teams worse in the West than them since then are Memphis, Golden State, Houston, Portland, San Antonio. Basically not good teams right now. 14th offense in the NBA in that time. 21st defense in that time, which sounds pretty good, but they're negative basically 2 net ratings. So they're getting outscored by 100 possessions on the other side. And their numbers are actually 1 win worse than their actual winning percentage. So Cleaning the Glass takes all your advanced stats together, puts it together, and they should actually be 15-19 instead of 16-18. So they've got 1 more win than they should. Why have they struggled lately? Why are they 16-18 since November 14th?
Well, health. I mean, health is one, obviously, and then that, I think, kind of led to all the other glaring issues. So when I was thinking about this, the first things that came to mind, and I just jotted down some things, and I said, I want to know man games lost in that time. I want to know defensive rating in that time. I want to know strength of opponent's schedule in that time. And I want to know 3-point shooting in the losses.
Yeah.
And my trusty Emmy Award-winning producer, Clark Rowe, on the pre- and post-game shows, I asked him to provide me with some numbers that may or may not support my gut instincts. And really and truly, I was pretty right on, because the man games lost since that period in November, 9th most in the NBA. And if you go to December 1st on, it's the 4th most. And they are tied for the most different starting lineups in that period of time with the Memphis Grizzlies. Think of all the issues the Memphis Grizzlies have had with players and roster stuff, right?
And it's the injuries are not just like Maxey being out or Josh being out. It's Kyrie's missed 15 games in that time.
Yes.
Luka's missed 6 games, and he's had the ongoing injuries. Lively has missed 9 games. Exum, who's become a starter, has missed 11 games. Then Maxey 28, Josh Green 12. Like, you're missing a lot of rotation players and starters.
Yes, exactly. I mean, and that is really significant. People are probably sick of hearing it and thinking about it. but it really is true. And that leads to so much of the defensive rating issue too. I mean, you've got Lively, Green, Kleba, Exum. Those are all guys that you want to be out there helping you defensively. Their defensive rating in that period of time, 20th. And it also the strength of schedule. So the 8-2 start, I think you said it was, it was a little soft, but that was fine, right? That's a great way to start. Well, from that point on, it's been the 6th toughest schedule in the NBA. The matchups got a lot harder. They lost important players. So there are a lot of things here that have made the 3-point shooting and the losses, by the way, they have shot 31% from 3. That's 29th in those losses. So we know how much they rely on the 3-point shot. When it goes away and they don't have another option, they lose those games. So, I mean, it feels like you can really identify the things. And some of it is just bad luck with the injuries.
Yeah. And the injuries it's more than just, a guy is out. And so, next man up. But they haven't had continuity. You mentioned all the starting lineups that they've had. You still haven't had continuity of a bunch of guys together that know how to play, that know where each other are going to be. They're still making like little mistakes where they pass to the wrong spot. Derrick Jones Jr. made 2 really bad turnovers last night in the middle of that collapse where you go, wait, why did you just pass out to there? Why would someone be there? Like they're just not used to guys having to do different roles they're not used to.
I totally agree with that. I think you see it too, and you see the frustration amongst the players. Defensively, you can sense they don't all feel like they're pulling in the same direction sometimes. And that's demoralizing, when you really are trying to play good defense, but there's miscommunications. We heard Grant Williams recently before the Boston game where he said, I really have kind of struggled to get a hold of the defensive system here. And it's taken him some time to be comfortable. So you definitely have, you look at the Boston Celtics, that whole core group has been together for so long. And the Mavericks have just, the briefest of periods of time on the court together. So there are not moments where you can just rely back to muscle memory with this thing. It is they are always out there having to think and try to make up for, the lack of, comfort with one another.
Yeah. And then the 3-point shooting that you mentioned, this is all great stuff. The 3-point shooting you mentioned, to me, it comes down to 2 guys that have really kind of have been, I don't know, as exposed is the right word, but like have really taken a slip, which really hurt them. Since December 8th, that's 22 games. Derrick Jones Jr. is shooting 28% from 3. That's really fallen off for him when he had a pretty good start. And then Grant Williams, who started the year shooting 60%. And I can remember being in the room where he goes, it's not good enough. I want to hit 100% of the threes. And I feel like ever since then, maybe that was November 19th. If it was, that'd be hilarious. November 19th, he's shooting 27% from 3. That's 26 games. Like those 2 guys not being able to hit threes has really pulled him down. And Grant Williams is the one that's surprising more than Derrick Jones Jr. Derrick Jones Jr. hasn't been a great 3-point shooter in his career, but Grant Williams, that was like the one thing coming in that I was really confident about. There were people that would text the subtext line and they're like, I'm worried about Grant Williams. I don't know about this new guy coming over from the Celtics. Like, if anything, he'll be a better 3-point shooter than what Reggie Bullock was at the beginning of the season, right? That's the baseline. It's like, can he be better than that? Can he be better than, a random role player at 3-point shooting? He's been a great 3-point shooter his whole career. And it just has really fallen off. And there's been talk of like he's got some kind of injuries here and there that are not keeping him out of games, but that are hurting him. And then I still feel like he's trying to find his place. He has the emotional blow-ups where he tries to be like the tough guy that pushes Nurkic and like gets into guys' faces and like feels like it just runs too hot where it's not like as a shooter you got to be even keel, right? Like because you can't get too high on the makes and you can't get too low on the misses, but it feels like it just is running so up and down for him. He can't really like level out.
That was a great description of everything. And I think the Phoenix Suns game was, boy, did that exemplify just everything about him, because he comes out and he hits those 2 threes to start the game. And that was such a good feeling. And what a sight for sore eyes. You're thinking, all right, good. He's going to be there. And then he was the one mixing everything up and kind of raising everybody's temperature and angst. And that proved not to really be helpful for the Mavericks at all. And as I'm starting the game thinking, oh, this could be a big Grant Williams game. By the end of it, he's not even out there anymore because he's
not
now
on the
been
bench.
ejected. Yeah. Yeah.
Just
So
gone.
there is a whole lot, I think, to try to work through with him. And hopefully just a second half of a season will be dramatically different.
Jason Kidd, I asked him about the defense and asked him about, I asked him, are you still looking for that defensive leader last night? And he said, yeah, he's out there somewhere. And I was like, do you think he's on a different team? And he said, no, he's on our team, but we've taken our roster to the limits. What did you think about that comment from him about basically like, we've taken this to what we can? It seemed like he wanted to move. And I was like, if he's subtly hinting at this to us, what do you think he's saying to Nico Harrison? Right.
Yes, I'm certain of that. And it does feel like, well, and the Mavericks have always been really active. Seven straight years they've made a move at the trade deadline. Of course, they're not all blockbusters like Kristaps Porzingis or Kyrie Irving, and they can't really even, have the capital to pull off probably a blockbuster this year.
Yeah.
And so because of the fact that they may not be able to go get that 20-point a game forward that they covet so much, it may be something that on the outside might look smaller, but if it is towards the defensive end, Jason Kidd, that's what he wanted to, hang his hat on all these years. That's how he started his first year with the Mavs. They were really good defensively. So that may be what they are able to pull off at the deadline. And that could be really good.
Yeah. Seems like they need to make some kind of change, some kind of new blood in. Maybe I would have hoped that getting healthy would have helped, but then Kyrie goes out with this thumb injury. It's just like every time they get close.
Because even adding in someone new is only going to add in someone else we've got to get comfortable into the mix. I mean, there is a point at which they just need to look internally and they just need to decide what this team is made of. Who are we going to be? This is our moment right here, right now. We're going to work on our own things and not look for help, not make excuses. They may have to, just hone in right now, look themselves in the mirror, right? And what are we going to change? How are we going to do things differently?
Or at least look yourself into the selfie camera, right? Like that's probably the new one, right? Like, hey, just at least look at yourself in your front facing camera. Oh man. Yeah, we've got 2 more games this weekend. We'll have you covered. Slightly and I will have post games for you. Reggie and I will be on Sunday night going into Monday, breaking down some more about this Mavericks team. Trades are coming up. The trade deadline is getting so close. 2 weeks away basically from right now. And I do think the Mavericks will make a move. Everyone seems to think that they will. And so we'll be following that. Guys, thanks so much for listening to Locked On Mavs.
Peace out.
Boom.